Thanks for listening again today, everyone. After the success of the last interview with Matt Price, we today are going to hear from a retired prison officer. He was good enough to share some of his stories and experiences with me. Something like 25, 30 years on the job, over a range of prisons, and in a time when the prison system was changing from sort of one regime to another, more modern system. So thanks very much again for agreeing to do the interview with me. Thank you everyone to listening and your continued support. I just want to let everyone know I've got no axe to grind with the prison service. I'm not here to kind of slag off any officers, prisons or governors, things like this. Everything I do is just so we can share experiences and hopefully all grow as people. So I'll jump straight into it I hope you enjoy it.
Well, I was just thinking of sort of your experiences in general. We could talk about how you got into the prison service, why you stayed so long. Because I think, did you say you got into around the 70s?
75.
75, and you ended in 2002 or 3?
2003, yeah, back in December 2003.
Yeah, I mean that's quite a long
52.
time.
I was 52 when I came out. So I didn't actually serve my full term to 55. 55 was the retirement age at that time.
Yeah.
But me and the wife, we used to go to Australia quite a bit, which I've sort of mentioned.
Sure.
And we just thought, let's just go, let's just emigrate and go and live there.
Yeah.
I get a pension from the service. It's not a full pension, but I'm happy with it. Yeah. But plus a state pension as well, of course. But sure. So I served 29 years in total.
Wow.
75 to 2003.
Sure. I mean, how many prisons does that kind of span as well? Because I know you said something about, I think Strangeways was one of the ones you were in.
Well, I started at Strangeways. I went for my interview there. Yeah. Well, in fact, I went to Wakefield for an interview and stuffed it up as you do. So I thought, I'll have another go. And I nominated Strangeways because I was sort of in between both of them. So I went to Strangeways and in May, and I started in July. So at that time there was no messing about.
No, straight in.
I just went in. The medical was pretty. I stood up basically, and a bit of an exam, but it was I was grammar school educated, so. Just walk through that. And I'd already just done it at Wakefield, of course. So, and then just an interview, and you'll do, mate. I started with 30 others in July the 21st, I think it was, in 1975 at Strangeways.
And do you interviewed for that prison, or do you just interview for the prison service and then they kind of allocate you or just move you around? Or
well, that comes later on because you do a month this is then, of course, it's totally different now from what I gather. You did a month at Strangeways to see if you were going to fit in, basically, interviewed and the whole thing, with prisons. And you're in civvies, of course.
Yeah.
So you stand out like a sore thumb, big time. There's a training PO there, principal officer, and he marks you up and so, you'll do and all that, sees how you're going. You have loads of writing to do and you go to different places, the kitchen, the gate, There was a bus allocation centre there at that time.
Sure.
So that was hell on earth, to be honest, kids.
What made you get into the prison service? Well, I mean, what were you doing if you was 22?
I used to go drinking with a guy that was a civilian instructor. I don't know if they had them when you were there.
We still had civilian instructors.
Yeah, he was a tailor. There's a shirt shop at Strangeways. He worked at Strangeways, and he says, I was in engineering prior to that, and it was falling apart because of the Far East and so on, making them twice as cheap. And I used to, he says, why don't you have a go at it? And that's at that point, I thought, I'll have a go. But I'd previously been out to Australia. I actually emigrated twice out there. I went in 74 and came back after a year. And then I met up with this civilian instructor. We drank together. He said, I'll have a go. And so I took 2 goes to get in. So yeah, you do a month at Strangers, and then you go to a training school. There was two at that time. One down in Gloucester, I think it was, down near Bristol, and the other one was at Wakefield, which is where I attended. So you do a month at the jail, and then 2 months at a training school where you go through all the paperwork and scenarios and give talks, and just there's two principal officers there instructing you in a governor grade.
Sure.
And,
I mean, because Wakefield's a pretty serious jail. I mean, how was that?
It wasn't at the jail itself.
Oh, it was just in Wakefield.
Yeah, it was near Pinderfields Hospital. Yeah, it was near it was an actual, well, like an army camp, I suppose, because there was probably 150, 200 of us there. The canteen was there, and the sort of little rooms where you lived, and the gymnasium and the parade ground, because they used to have marching. They marched up and down at that time, which they won't do anymore, of course. But you were still in civvies at that time. You'd know uniform. You didn't get your uniform till you were actually allocated your jail.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I did the 3 months, a month at Strangeways, which was, God, that was hell on earth. That was a jail. That was. No wonder it went up in 1990. 3 to a cell. Oh man, it was cheese. It was just a warehouse.
Because that was the reason it went. They kicked off, wasn't it? Because of the conditions they were so
well, and the staff were absolutely horrendous towards the prisoners. Yeah, there was. Yeah.
I take it you went there.
What, in 90?
Yeah, in 90, you went there then, no?
No, but I did go across there. I was at a dispersal jail in the north then. I was at Full Sutton. I was at Full Sutton prison then, because it went up. Jail sent detachments over, and I'd done the CNR, what they call CNR 4 training,
right? Which
was shields and sticks and fire bombs and all that stuff. I'd done that. So I was part of the what they call them, tornado teams. I don't know what they call them these days. So yeah, 50 of us went across there. So I expect there was probably 500 officers there when we decided to storm the jail, which was a bit of a mess in the end. But there you go.
Oh, what was that like?
It didn't end it, as you know. It kept going for another 25, 26 days. Well, we were told to go in, and I don't know. We entered a wing. There was scaffolding up in the centre at that time. It was one of those radial jails. I don't know if Exeter was like that.
Yeah,
the centre bit, and the wings radiating from it. Dispersal jails are not like that. They're built different. And we got into the wing, and they were throwing scaffolding poles down at us and all sorts of stuff. But we were told to withdraw in the end. And that was the end of it. It just went on for 25 to 26 days, as you know.
Yeah, because they were set up on the roof. I remember it being sort of images every day up on the news, in the donkey jackets up on the roof.
The helicopter and blaring music out, trying to keep people away. I think what ended it to some degree was that a lot of them were consuming rotten food.
Yeah.
And it turned a lot of them. The diehards were up there. I did meet them later on. They were kept in segregation units in dispersal jails, of course, after that.
Sure. I mean, the food didn't really get much better when I was in there. I know a lot of the food comes in and it's kind of unrecognizable to food you see on the outside.
Well, yeah. What happened was they raided the kitchens, of course, but I can't remember whether it was midsummer or not, but I think the food went off. So they were actually eating stale food, and they were all coming down with all sorts of stomach problems and diarrhea and what have you. That's we're talking 30 years ago, so I'm trying to remember what happened. But I only stopped 2 days. I got sick of it, and then I thought, this is a waste of time. And I just volunteered to come back. So there was no way to sleep. Sorry.
I was going to say no. So once you were trained, and you were sort of ready to be an officer, where did you go, sort of, to get started?
Well, towards the end, there was probably, I don't know, 170 of us maybe at the course, or maybe up to 200. I can't remember, but people were being dismissed all the time. So I think it got down to about 120. It's not like that now, from what I gather, from what I read of other people's podcasts. You arrive there and you're in. That's it. But they didn't. They just dismissed people, and there was no comebacks to it. We're talking 45 years ago. If you were sacked, you were sacked, and that was the end of it. There was getting your solicitor in and unfair dismissal and all that. You just went. That was the end of it. People were called out the classroom. You never saw them again, and that was it. You know.
Do you think the staff were better trained back then, sort of more capable back then than they are now?
I think the majority seemed to come from the services, from the military. There were a lot of ex-military guys. In fact, I would say probably most were ex-military.
Yeah.
And certainly, I went to Albany on the Isle of Wight dispersal jail. It was my first prison. And they were all ex-Navy there, ex-commandos, ex-Marines. Nearly, I was probably one of the very few that wasn't ex-military.
How do you think the inmates reacted to more? Because I have a feeling that, you know, prisons myself, I think, should be on army camps, and I think that, you know, you should have military staff running them. So I just think the military staff are far more capable of kind of dealing with situations and men and, you know, kind of conflict and things like this. How did you find the staff reacted, or the inmates reacted to you know, the Navy staff and the difference between the Navy staff and maybe the civilian staff?
Well, it was strange because particularly that prison was all electronic unlocking. You didn't have a set of keys even.
Okay.
So, it's quite advanced for its time. The computer was as big as a wardrobe. Of course, it would now be as, you know, on your fingernail. But everything was electronically unlocked. All the doors into the wings, all the doors into the main jail, everything was electronic. Even the inter doors between the wings were all electronic. And the landing doors. They had a system there called night sanitation, because the cells were so small. There was no toilets in them. And I think you had this at Portland. We did.
Where you had to press a button and then get in a queue. And then your door was unlocked for about 5-10 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, I think there was... they pressed a button. I think they turned something. There was a thing that they could turn. It wasn't just pressing a button. And they got into a queue, and then they could come out for 10 minutes. And it was all monitored from the control room, which is where I worked. There was two computer terminals there, and 2 of us monitored that. There was 6 of us in there, all told. One on the outer banking cameras, one on the inner, one on communications, and one on the phone. And then there was 2 of us out the back on the terminals, opening and shutting doors constantly.
Yeah.
You know, it was quite labour intensive. But at night time, on nights, you would monitor. You'd tell people to get back in. Of course, you'd say, "Come on, Smithy, you know, you've been out 10 minutes. Get back in." You know,
because they'd be running around trying to get cigarettes and things.
Yeah. Well, they'd be up to mischief on the landing. They couldn't go anywhere. They could go between the cells. They could go between 24 cells. But we couldn't see them. But you could certainly shout out. But what if you've stuffed you around, you could stop them. You just take them out of the system all the time. Once their number came up, you just remove it, you know. So they knew you could do that. So to stuff you around was not a good idea, because we were on there for, you know, nights for 7 days. You stuff somebody around for 7 days just to block them all the time, so they never got out.
We the system at Portland, because I was only on that wing for about a month or so, maybe 2 months. But one night, just all the cells just opened up. You know, and the staff had to come around and just put everyone back away again. But yeah, just everybody, as soon as the system sort of triggered in, it just unlocked everyone.
So were the doors unlocked electronically there on a normal basis?
Not on sort of. It was just in the evenings at night time. That was the only time they used it.
Just a night sanitation.
Yeah, but during the day it just had a normal key lock as well.
Yeah. We just had a pass key that got you through the steel gates into the workshops. You didn't have a cell key, so you could draw them, but everything was electronically unlocked. But there was a big bolt on the outside, because when you went to lock people up, you know, you had to put the bolt across, and you could just walk straight back out again. Yeah. So you put the bolt across, but you took it off at night, because if the place set on fire, they did an automatic wing release. The whole night, there was 96 cells on the wing at Albany. They would all unlock. So you had to have the bolts off, you know, so the guys could get out if there was a fire, of course. Yeah. That never happened. I was there for 12 years, and that never happened the whole time. There's plenty of cell fires, but that was through the day, and usually nonsense being set on fire and the stuff. Yeah, that was a daily occurrence. Cell fires are just ongoing. Not the observation glass out of the side and just pour some flammable liquid through it, or just throw a match in, because it went onto the bed was under there, so they could soon set them on fire. It was just ongoing all the time.
Now, obviously, I've talked about that before. You know, the kind of repercussions, and when the sort of the inmates on the main wings do get hold of kind of sex offenders and nonsense and things. Did you see much of the the repercussions of
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I remember one time at Albany, Wednesday was the intake day, and this young black guy came up to me. That he'd obviously just been, I was on the induction when he came up to me and says, "Hey, you get stabbed and knifed up in here." I said, "Well, first I've heard of it, mate," and dismissed it. And I carried on with what I was doing, stuffing around as you do. And I heard this commotion down in the TV room. It was quite a big room, obviously to get 80 guys in to watch a TV and 96 guys. I wouldn't all be in there at once, but I looked in, it was pitch black, but there was a big fight going on at the other end. And I thought, bloody hell, what's going on here? So I got the lights on. By the time I got the lights on and got myself down in amongst them, everybody was sat down, open up. They were trying to hold the breath. And this little black guy being bashed to hell. His glasses were all skew with. We helped him out. They'd obviously found out straight away, giving him a good bashing. But it was strange that they'd all run back to the seats and just sat there and tried to look like they'd not been exerting themselves. But about, I don't know, a dozen guys whacking this bloke about. He just went down the seg unit, and where it went from there, I have no idea. Probably across the Parkhurst or somewhere.
I know.
But yeah.
You do see, because obviously, everybody gets the option when you go into prison to kind of, they put themselves down to the the protection wing. But
43 business, yeah.
Yeah, you see so many of them do just try and sneak through onto the main wing for whatever reason. But it never...
And some people get away with it.
Of course,
some people were on there for rape, and they were just allowed to get away with it. Why that was, I don't know. I remember when I was at Brixton, I was a medical officer there, a hospital officer, and there was a ward of 15 and the telly at the other end, and we're all sat watching the news, just as you do. And it came up with this case where this guy had killed this baby. He'd swung it round by its ankles and bashed its head off the wall and killed it.
Gosh.
And geez, that was bad. But I thought no more about it. Anyway, 8 o'clock when the inductions are coming in comes the guy that the guy that's done it.
Yeah.
So I says to him, "Look, mate, get into that bed 15 there in the corner. Don't say anything. Just keep your head down," and so on and so forth. So I shoved him, and you're on your own. I shoved him in there.
Yeah.
And within minutes, the whole 14 of them were beating the hell out of him. They'd obviously picked up on it, and there's no way I was going to go in there with, half the ward bashing him up. So I had to call downstairs, which took forever to get somebody up. So he was given a real thorough booting before we could get in there and get him out. I could have gone in there, but the guys they want to touch me for sure.
Yeah,
I was never assaulted in the whole of the 29 years in the job.
That's interesting. Did you see many staff getting assaulted? Because I know it does obviously happen.
Oh, mate, yeah, but it normally happens because you've done something. An inmate will never just walk up and whack you. Never on this earth. Officers are getting pots of shit thrown over them as well. Sometimes I won't say you deserve it, but you are the mechanics behind it, so to speak. I was lucky. I picked on a guy one day early in my service. It was a Cat A down in Albany, and it got worse and worse. He had a big picture on his outside wall. I told him to take it down. It was about 6 foot. I said, "It's got to come off that outside wall. This is a PO says it's fine." I said, "Well, I don't care what the PO says. I want it off."
Now, when you're talking about the outside wall, that obviously means the back wall to the cell.
Where the window is.
That's it, yeah, because you don't want to do the old hole out beyond the poster.
Yeah. They weren't supposed to be on that outside wall. I was being a bit panicky, and I kept it going for some strange reason. I can't remember now, but it got worse, and he was quite popular as a guy, as a Cat A, and everybody got involved in it in the wing. Who's digging you out, mate? That little fucker over there, which was me. So everybody starts taking the stuff that if the wing's going to kick off, what they usually do is take the radios and all the good stuff down to reception. They put it back into property. And that's what they were all doing.
Yeah.
They were all sending all the hi-fis and all the stuff down to reception. Bloody hell, this is going a bit further than I wanted to go. And two guys were arranged to give me a kicking at the lockup. But another cat here that I knew tipped me off about it. And I kept out of the way, basically. But they took me off the wing in the end and put me down census for a couple of years out of the way. Yeah, I was lucky I didn't get a boot in that day.
But other than that, you never had any trouble with anybody?
Oh, threatened. Yeah, constantly being threatened. Yeah, where do you start? Yeah. I was in, it's a long story, but I was in charge of a conjugal visit, can you believe?
Okay.
The wing governor called me up. He says, look, this guy, he was a cat aide doing 20 years. This was at a jail up north, a dispersal jail. He's getting married, or he's been married, or whatever. I can't remember now. It's we're going back 30 years probably. And he's having a visit with his wife in one of the solicitors, legal visits rooms down in visits. I thought, well, and so what, what's all this about? And I never really thought it through. Anyway, I get some prisoner, he's a big guy as well. He says, you know what's happening this afternoon, don't you? Yeah, you're getting a visit. I'm taking you down there, I didn't know anything about this conjugal visit business. So we get down there and show him in the room. But me and this other guy, the other officer, are in this little corridor at the back. And I thought, we sat there. I said, I don't want to be here. I want to be through the other side where the canteen is and stuff. So I walked through, and of course he's looking at it with his missus. So we walked through. I shut the door at the other end. Anyway, we get back up to the wing, and he comes looking for me. And with these wings up there, you're on your own. If you upset somebody, you're on your own because there's no other stuff about it. It's just the location and the physical layout of the building. Anyway, he corners me in the spur. And I think he pinned me up against a wall. He was a big guy, and I was only 11 stone. I wasn't a big guy. And there was nobody there to assist me. He says, he gets stuck in verbally to me. And I say, look, mate, I'm putting my hands up. I didn't realise what was going on. I didn't mean any. You could obviously see that I didn't realise what was going on. I would have just walked in on you. He was spitting. He says, if my wife had said anything, I would be killing you at this point. Wow. And I managed to talk myself out of it, and I thought, geez, because, if you upset somebody in a dispersal jail, at some point you're going to be on your own with them.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So you nick somebody, they go down the block, they do the 5 days, 7 days, whatever, but then they back up and they're back on your wing. And if they got an axe to grind with you, there's plenty of time to get back at you. So you've got to be, you've got to have your head screwed on really, and you don't want to be upsetting too many people because people are doing a lot of bird. And they don't often get you. They don't often get you back themselves. They'll pay somebody £0.5 to do you.
Yeah, indeed.
I got away with it that time. I put my hands up, apologized to him, and just stood down. What can you do? I wasn't going to lay into him because it would have been he would have beaten me anyway for a start. And he'd nothing to lose, So you got to be really careful. I know of an officer that got hot fat thrown over him up there as well. Oh. At lockup time, somebody's cooking chips and that, you push them too hard, and people have nothing to lose.
No, it's a fine line. It's a fine line now. Yeah. Did you watch the BBC program, the Time one with
I
Sean
did,
Bean?
yeah.
How did you find that? Because I thought it was very realistic. Very, very.
Yeah, look, lots of things wouldn't have happened that way. It wouldn't have panned out that way. I don't think. If somebody had come to you and said, "Look, mate, we know your boy's in jail at Shrewsbury or wherever, we can get him done." Unless you start bringing the stuff in, it wouldn't have panned out that way. Whoever said that to you would have been straight down the seg unit anyway.
Indeed, yeah, they would have been off the other end of the country, and
Yeah, they just disappeared, you know. And the boy should have taken 43 anyway, you know.
Yeah.
Onto the nonsense wing. He didn't want to do that for whatever reason, from what I remember. It wouldn't have panned out that way, you know. And you wouldn't just start bringing all that stuff in. You imagine all that stuff coming in that waistcoat he had on.
That was a lot of stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah. It would have flooded the wing in seconds. And now, if I was on duty early in the morning, which is obviously when he's bringing the stuff in, and I'm sat in the office and I see my mate come on and go to a cell and go into a cell, you'd think, "Whoa, what's going on here?" I'd be straight down there. What the hell's happening here? You wouldn't go into a cell like that.
No,
there was no way you would walk into a cell on your own. Before unlock, it just wouldn't happen. You would be alert, and that's how women are found out. It's an epidemic of women with prisoners at the moment.
There is, and
that's how they found out, because they're
going into the cell.
Yeah, you would be. Why is that person always at that door? You just find it strange. You want to know what the hell's going on.
Were you ever approached to bring in items, or was that were you ever leaned on, or sort of did you know?
Not really. Not that I can remember. No. A cat did ask me if I had access to the records at one stage. He's quite an infamous cat, actually. I won't mention his name. But yeah, there was obviously something afoot, and that was back in the early 70s. It wasn't electronic at that time. I don't know whether I can't remember whether he wanted me to alter something on his record or something. I don't know. But he was quite, if I said the name, you would know him.
Sure. Did you, in your sort of span in the prison service, did you have many sort of celebrity criminals or sort of high profile criminals that you worked with?
Oh, well, he was one of them. And what happened, he came to me one afternoon. He says, "Mate," he says, "you left me unlocked at lunchtime, because of this electronic locking business. I don't know what had happened, but I hadn't locked his door, or I'd locked him in with somebody else. I can't remember what had happened, but he wasn't locked up." And he says, "Look, mate, we'll just keep that between me and you." Oh, yeah, sure, we'll keep that between me and you. So straight down to the PO, I said, "Look, mate, PO, there's a problem. I've left Smith unlocked all dinner time." He says, "Yeah, well, what happened?" "Well, nothing." He says, "Well, that's the end of it then." So if he tried to bend on me, I would just gone to the PO and he would have been shipped out. But he didn't, in actual fact. He didn't come on. But I can never remember anybody. I took garden parties out, and we were quite close. I would say we were on first name terms with a lot of the guys. But no, I don't remember. It wasn't, but because mobile phones weren't a thing then, of course. Probably they were just coming in as I left. 1999.
Yeah, and then they were getting smaller and smaller because they're quite big to start with, weren't they? But then I remember sort of early 2000s, sort of, when I remember when I was in Portland, you could get phones that were quite small then, sort of lipstick size. And then just get them in now. And now, obviously, it's just drones. You can get sort of disposable drones. You can just sort of kamikaze over the wing. And
I see them for sale on eBay and so on and so forth.
Because there's phones now as well that have they've got no metal parts, so they don't show up on scans as well now. So
because they have if they brought in your bum, you can sit you on the seat, don't they, and make an X-ray in there and so on and so forth. But yeah, I thought time was quite good. They obviously crammed a lot into that 3 episodes, I certainly didn't see bullying going on like that.
Did you not?
I don't remember. No. In dispersal jails, it didn't go on. Not that. And in lots of ways, there was like two societies running along, the one that I was part of and the one that they were part of.
Exactly.
And half the time, you just didn't know what was going on and had no interest, of course. People having drinking parties and that, you didn't get involved in going down to try and break that up. It'd be more than your life was worse, and everybody just, ignored it basically. If you were on the burgling team searching and found it, you would dispose of it, but you weren't going to put your head in a noose and go down and try and break a party up. Do you
think that's a technique that works well? Kind of sometimes just letting the right people kind of get away with some things because it's going to keep the wing quieter on the whole.
Yeah, look, I tried to get on and, did my utmost to get on best I could with prisoners, especially high profile prisoners, because they could help you out. As that one tipped me off, when they were going to do me down on the Spurs that night, he was on the garden party, and we would just chit chat. We were first name terms. I was on the garden party every day, so morning and afternoon. So we were pretty close, I would say. Chit chatting away. I didn't talk about my family and stuff, but it was informal. It wasn't. It was officer and inmate, but it was pretty informal, I would say. And so he did build good, strong relationships up, and that saved me, on numerous occasions. And I've probably said it before in comments. The cleaners helped me out many times when things were turning a bit nasty.
Well, that's it. I mean, the cleaners know what's going on because they're the ones always out, aren't they? So the cleaners are the wings, the eyes and ears.
Yeah, and I used, like my wife worked in the jail at the same time. She was a nurse. I was, we were both medics basically, and she was working on the wings, and somebody was coming on to her, giving her a rough time. I can't remember. And I said to one of the cleaners, one of the lifers from B wing, I says, "Mate, could you have a word with this bloke, or do what needs to be done to, just correct his attitude a bit towards my wife?" "Yeah, mate, yeah." It just clocked him or whatever, I don't know, but it stopped. It stopped immediately. And he could do that, efficiently, where I could go across and nick him and all that.
Sure. It
was just easy to get a prisoner to go across and give him some peer pressure. And we used that quite a lot. Well, I used it quite a lot, to get things done. He tried to, sorry.
Oh no! I was just going to say, how do you think the prison service changed in your time there? Sort of, from the 70s to the 2000s. I mean, how obviously there's big difference in was there sort of different crimes, different drugs in prisons, different sort of level of criminals. I mean, what was your experience to kind of that change?
Yeah, drugs weren't really a big problem. I worked in census, I mentioned earlier on. We didn't particularly look for drugs. They talked about stuff being soaked in LSD and stuff, but drugs weren't really a problem. Drugs were, and that was in the 80s. I was in census.
Yeah,
drugs weren't really a problem. Phones weren't a problem. From what I remember in my first 12 years in that dispersal jail, you had there was, I don't know, there was little contact between you when you were on the wings. Gardens parties, which I was involved in, you got to know the guys, but generally, you went onto a landing and you sat down, and the doors unlocked electronically, and you had no interaction between you.
Yeah,
basically, they just went about their business, and we just sat there and drank tea and read books, and so for 15 hours a day, we were sat there. Because there was never enough staff lunches, so we were working all the time, night and day.
Sure.
I once worked 83 days without a day off.
Wow.
It's just, I didn't find it particularly stressful at work. So I was quite happy to go in, sit there for 15 hours reading and drinking tea. I ended up in Brixton in 1990 as a medic.
That's quite a tough jail as well, isn't it? Obviously an inner city jail, lots of gangs and,
Yeah, and that's really, I don't think that was so prominent as, what postcode you're from. And remember, I was a medic, so I was sort of not involved in the running of the wings. I was sort of, in the hospital all the time. The hospital was a huge thing as well. There's probably 60, 80 of us, hospital trained guys. It was probably anything up to 400 people in the hospital at any one time at that point. There was a wing with 300. It was a monster.
Now, in your experience, because I was a listener for large amounts of time at the prison, and I know we would end up coming down to the hospital wing in various prisons and having to listen to mentally ill inmates who were just kind of put in the medical centre rather than being on the main wings. I'm talking about sort of people with schizophrenia and, you know,
Yeah.
other kind of
Psychosis.
real issues. And the listener service was used quite a lot to kind of, because I didn't really know what else to do with them. They couldn't, you know, you couldn't have a member of staff stood outside the door constantly. So what was your kind of
we did do that as well, of course.
Yeah. So what was your experience with
I
kind of mental health issues with that, and just kind of the medical wing just being kind of burdened with this rather than?
It was an absolute monster. Bricks. A lot of it was drug induced, of course. And once they hadn't got access to drugs, of course, it tapered off. But we had some, the cells were smashed to smithereens, you know.
Yeah.
And these people were put on sections, of course, and were put on treatment orders. They came to the jail, and of course, down reception, you'd have 200 people coming in a day and 200 people going out. It was a monster. Was Brixton for that, you know, because it remand jail, people going to court, people being released, 5 days in jail, blah blah blah. But people would come back in and under treatment orders under the Mental Health Act. They'd be under like Section 37, where the crime was committed because they were unwell. So they were sent to hospital for treatment rather than jail for punishment. But Brixton was full of people like that, and the wings probably weren't much better, to be honest.
Sure.
But we did medicate quite heavily. You know, we would hold people down and inject them under common law at the end of the day if they were really absolutely unwell. You know, not functioning at all. We would hold them down and inject them and give them a series of injections to try and which was only what they would do in hospital.
Of course, yeah.
Talk to people till the cows come home, but they need chemical intervention. And that's what we would do. And if they took it voluntary, you know, because a lot of these guys were unwell outside, and they knew they knew what medication they were on, we would give it them. So a lot of medication was voluntary, but sometimes if people were, you know, absolutely really unwell, you know, they'd be naked, you know, covered in poop, you know, place smashed to pieces, you know, 4 or 5 of us to open them up. Strength of a lot of people like that I can think of. We would medicate them heavily with Largactil, chlorpromazine, sedative to try and bring them down a bit.
Sure,
but it would go on for days, you know.
I know, because like I say, my experience is sort of going down there, and you'd be listening to people with voices in their head telling them that, you know, the members of staff are going to be opening the doors, you know, at night to send people in to get them and things, and you know, these
paranoia,
delusions and paranoia. It was quite
hallucinations,
difficult.
Delusions, schizophrenia. A lot of it is, as I said earlier, is drug induced as well. Not the drugs we give them, but certainly, you know, cannabis was one of the worst offenders for making psychosis worse or bringing it on. Drug-induced psychosis.
Wow.
But absolutely. You know, the wing with the 300 on F wing, absolutely. You know, everybody in there was unwell, really unwell. It was like bedlam, as they said. They shut it down in the end because it just wasn't humane. Stuff that was going on. They're trying to control people like that and feed people as well. You know, at the hot plate was, you know, a nightmare. But you know, it was what it was at the end of the day. You know, we're talking 30 years ago now, so things have changed.
I mean, do you think the prison system works in a whole? You know, for sort of either reoffending or punishment?
Look, you know, it paid me a wage, and probably it worked for me. I don't know what else you're going to do. You know, society has to have some sort of retribution, I suppose. And generally, we saw the same people come in, you know, that revolving door business back in, you know, we would meet them on reception, still on the drugs, Jimmy, okay, we'll get you on a methadone program. You know, it was just ongoing. I was involved, as I was in the corrections, it was corrections out in Australia. I worked in the drugs department of that. We had a big van and we would go around and to try and stop this revolving door business where, you know, person commits crime, goes to jail, gets clean, goes back out, commits crime, comes back in. And I worked for the drug court, and we would go around and test people in the community. And that was a story in itself. Some of the stuff we encountered for them to try and get out of it. But yeah, they did try and break it, but I don't think it worked in the end. Out of 100, probably two successfully did the drug court program, as it was.
Wow.
But the rest relapsed because it's just too much temptation, of course.
I mean, yeah, drugs are difficult. I mean, I used to make money in prison by selling my pee. So I would pee in gloves for people, and they'd tie it up and tie it to their waistband. And I used to make quite a good living selling my clean pee for people.
Yeah, you see, you wouldn't have got away with that on the system that we ran, because you would stick the thermometers. You had 2 thermometers, and the little toilet in the van. It was a Mercedes Sprinter van. There was a little toilet in there with a curtain, and they would go and pee in there. There was 2 of us in there, male and a female, because obviously we did females as well. And sometimes we would watch. 1 in 4 we would watch to make sure it was them peeing, not doing what you're doing. We stick the thermometers in there, and if it was anything above a degree out, like 37.5, just for instance, if it was 30, 36, I'd be saying that's too cold, mate. Or if it was like 40 or 42 sometimes, you'd think, mate, you should be in the hospital, you're burning up. We'd make them go again. It was obviously they'd got some pee in the pocket, or they'd warmed it up in the microwave. And we'd straight away. And sometimes just as soon as they walked into the van, I knew they were up to something.
Yeah.
But you could hear things being unscrewed, but we used to watch them as well. But there was ways around that as well. They used to, you might have a look at it on Google. They could get these things called whizinators. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it. Just explain.
Well, it's a rubber penis, basically, to the colour of yourself, of course. If you look them up, there's various colours from Chinese to white male, black male, brown, and you get reconstituted dried pee.
Right.
They reconstituted that and then put it into the panel underneath, and there was a little pump that pumped it out. So if you were watching, this thing would come out, they'd switched it on, and out would come the pee. Unless you reached across, you wouldn't know, of course. But there's levels that I wouldn't even go to. So there were ways around that as well. We used to put blue in the water as well in case they tried to dilute it. It had to be, if it looked like, I think I've heard you talk about people drinking lots, but if it looked like water, we wouldn't accept it. So you need to go again.
Yeah, so that was it. So
it's got to look like pee, not like water.
That's it, and that's one thing they started doing because that would be a way round it as well. You dip the cup into the toilet bowl to kind of get the water from there, or you'd like you say,
I was had blue in it, so that was no point.
There's no chance of doing that. But, or like you say, if it came out too clear, they'd treat that as a fail as well, just because it was it was obviously been diluted or manipulated. They wouldn't let you get away with that either.
Yeah, we would catch people out here all the time, but it was mainly those whizinators were mainly used for people that worked in the mines where they were on $100,000 a year and they couldn't afford to lose a job.
Right.
The people we were working with weren't particularly that high profile, so that to go to the expense of buying these things and reconstituting clean pee and all that. But yeah. So yeah.
I was going to say, so how was that your whole experience? We just were working with the testing in Australia. Did you do anything else with the system over there?
No, I was just part of the drug court, but because I'd been in the prison service here and we'd done a bit of pee testing, although I wasn't really involved in that. But I said I was. Security does it. I guess that's what happened in Exeter.
Yeah, security does it all.
We didn't get involved in that. But we had a little in the van. We had a machine as well that we'd put the pee in it and it'd tell us what drugs were in there: benzos, cocaine, heroin, whatever. It was quite a good setup.
Yeah, I mean, because that was because we had the 5-dip tests, which would cover the things you said, and sometimes they just do the sort of 2-dip, which would just be like either heroin and weed and things like that. But Yeah, you had obviously MDTs, which are the mandatory ones, just sort of picked at random from the whole
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
prison system. But we used to get sort of voluntary ones as well because we was enhanced, so you'd have to do at least one a month, just to
yeah.
show that you were clean. And when I was on the resettlement wing, we'd be doing them once a week, just to make sure that we're sort of, just there's no drugs on the wing. Because that was the one thing they were really worried about. Obviously, if they're sending loads of lads out to work every day, that the
Yeah,
wing's gonna be
yeah.
flooded with drugs and stuff. So we smuggled everything else in, sort of chocolate bars, alcohol, everything, computer games,
Yeah, yeah.
porn. But yeah, I always stayed away from drugs on that way.
You actually, we were talking about trafficking and so on and time. You actually managed to get somebody to do that for you, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. When was part of the Scouts gang in Exeter, they
Yeah,
managed
yeah.
to manipulate one of the members of staff into bringing things in. Yeah, and he
Jeez,
would.
that is so so
Mm.
dangerous for
And because I had,
because that would. Sorry.
yeah, I was going to say, because I was from the southwest, it was easy for me to get hold of the drugs, and so I would get the drugs, and then they deliver them to this guy, and it would just basically be sort of steroids, weed, coke, some phones, and yeah. So I think we was there for about 6 to 8 months, something like that, and he'd be sort of bringing it in sort of at least sort of every fortnight, something like that for us. So yeah, I don't know if he's still there now. I'm not sure, but
Geez, yeah. But if you get caught doing that, you're looking at 4 years,
mm.
and you lose everything.
There was another member of staff. So one of the, it was a bit lesser before that. So it was just getting them to kind of bring stuff in from my locker, which they shouldn't have done. So because I was a DCAT within the CCAT prison, so
Yeah,
I was able to go out to work, and I had a locker up at the gate, and I'd just start off just putting a couple of DVDs in there. And when it was his weekend on, I'd just say, look, here's my key. Can you go back up to the gate, get my DVDs, and bring them back? And obviously, that's just completely bypassing the reception and security and everything.
Yeah.
And he'd just go and do it, and he was quite happy. But he was kind of old school. I think he was getting close to retirement and kind of just stopped caring.
Yeah.
So I think he kind of.
There are things you would do that you could probably get away with, but to actually do it for payment, geez, yeah, it's just too risky. Well, I wouldn't have done it anyway. And it wasn't the 12 years I was on the Isle of Wight, I never knew anybody that was caught doing that. Neither when I was up north in Full Sutton. I don't remember anything.
My older brother, he got 9 years for a crime that he did, and he ended up going to a private jail up north. I can't remember the name of it. But because it was private and sort of commercial, it was a whole lot more lax. The staff were a lot easier to kind of turn and so there'd be female staff sort of doing favors for kind of 50 quid for the armed robbers and things. And my brother worked in the kitchens in the prison, and he managed to get. He was having an affair basically with the woman who was sort of number one in the kitchens, and her husband worked in the prison as well. So the way they found out, they searched his room and they found a phone, and then when they looked on the phone, there was all sorts of pictures of the woman from the kitchens on there. So not only did she lose her job, but she lost her marriage and everything as well. And when he moved back down here, she was still messaging him. She was still talking to him. So even though she'd lost everything, she was still sort of chasing him.
And that goes on nearly every week. You pick the newspaper up. Females in prison. And I knew of it when I worked in the local jail. And it was people that you would not dream that would do that. And they were at it. Crikey.
I mean, it must happen in the sort of the male prisons with the females as well. Did you ever work in a female prison?
I read a case the other day up here. There's a female jail up here, Lord Newton, where an officer was. I think he got 9 years. He didn't get let off. It was a big sentence, 9 years.
Yeah.
So it works the other way. I haven't worked in females. I wouldn't work with young offenders either.
No, young offenders was possibly because Portland used to have the under 18s there also, and they were the absolute worst because at that point, I don't know if it's changed now, but you couldn't get extra days, so they would just do their time, whether they fought every day or not. It was horrendous. And then obviously the 18 to 21s would be fighting all the time. But as soon as you get to the 21s and over, it's a lot more calm.
I was in dispersals, fights between prisoners. I can't really remember. yeah, they did have the disputes, and I guess they settled them out of sight of us. But you weren't breaking fights up between prisoners, but certainly in the local jail you were, pretty much every day, and they were fighting us as well.
It's interesting to obviously hear your perspective of not really seeing bullying and sort of not seeing fights, because I can almost guarantee that they would have been happening on a daily basis, and it would have been happening a lot. But it's just the way that it's kind of hidden. And as a prisoner, I saw a different side of the wing to you would have seen as a
yeah, the two societies running side by side, and never the two will mix, really.
Exactly.
The only way we found out stuff was going on, the prisoners would tell us.
Did you get many did you have many sort of informants on a wing? I mean, is that something that's quite regular? I mean, because we always, as inmates, you always think there's, people grassing and running to the staff all the time. But would you, was there regular sort of people that you wouldn't even expect to be, coming to the office all the time and things? Or
not in dispersal. I don't remember it in dispersal jails going on. I think they were quite tight-lipped amongst themselves. But you would get notes in the census box. Right. I don't know how it worked in Exeter, but there was a mailbox that the cons would drop the mail into, and we would come along every day and open it and take stuff out. Yeah, you'd get letters in there to say what was going to happen and what was not going to happen. Oh, okay. But it wasn't like every day you'd pick stuff up. But that was one way they'd communicate. Sometimes, of course, they were just getting their own back on somebody that had done them a disfavour, probably. There's all that, entwinement that you have no idea about. But, because I was in the hospital all the time, it was a different setup, really. You pretty well knew what was going on because there were open wards. Yeah. And people would, prisoners came to me one day and said, look, this new bloke on in bed 4's been going around all the lockers at night, helping himself to tobacco and that. Cool. Yeah, okay. I need to go out the back for 10 minutes. And, I went out the back and it was sorted out, of course, between themselves, which was what you would expect. He came to me and said, look, I need to move. I said, look, mate, the damage is done. You've had your punishment. Just get on with it. So
yeah, you did see a lot of that where you'd see someone going to the office with a black eye and kind of like a bleeding nose and things. I need to move now.
It doesn't matter anymore, mate. It's been sorted at the look of it. And you allowed that to go on to some degree, I suppose. It's just the way it was, rightly or wrongly. It didn't happen all the time, I must admit, but I do remember the odd occasion when justice was meted out.
Is there anything you would change about the prison system if you could? Or if you could kind of wave a magic wand and kind of either make it better or more tough, or is there anything you think that you could sort of one fix to kind of make things a better place for either side?
I do think that good staff are the key to it. If people are, that have seen a little bit of the world, and you're not going to pick people up for every little bit, nicking people unnecessarily. I nicked a lot of people early on because of the abuse I was getting, because I was so young and small, of course. I think from what I gather now, that the standard of staff is pretty low. And all this diversity business as well, it was beginning to creep in down in the local I worked at. People were being brought into the job more for the boxes they ticked than the capabilities.
Sure.
If you can say that,
I mean,
there was some very... Sorry.
I was just going to say, I used to work for a company that would deal with debt advice. And I remember speaking to a prison officer on the phone who'd basically put himself on the sick because he was afraid to go in, just because of the sort of the threats of violence and things. I think prisons have become a lot more violent place up until recently. I mean, obviously, I think since COVID, I think everyone's still on a sort of 23-hour lockdown. Can you imagine that? Just the last sort of 18 months, just been on 23 hours because the prisons first, got to look after the members of staff, haven't they? So yeah, everyone's just locked away. There's no courses, no rehabilitation. Anyone who's been to prison in the last 18 months hasn't been rehabilitated. They could have gone in and come out again, just being locked in that box.
Well, no, a lot of the staff want to develop the skills of interpersonal skills that you build up, and the relationship, and I think that, and I see that on other podcasts, that dynamic security, which is, forming good relationships with prisoners. So when it does, go tits up, you can call back on that relationship, call the favours back in.
I think that was always key. I mean, the staff that I always had the most problem with were the staff that came in almost like it was a battle every day. They were there, hard faced. You knew just not to ask them for anything. There was no point in going to them. They were looking to nick you for anything, whether it be sort of laying on your bed in the afternoon, that sort of thing. Or I don't know if they used to do it with you, but you used to have sort of a mini inspection every day. And if you didn't pass your inspection, you didn't get out for social that afternoon or that evening.
You wouldn't be inspected in a dispersal jail. You wouldn't get away with it. You'd be thrown down the stairs. Because at the end of the day, these jails run, with a prisoner's permission, basically, especially in a dispersal jail. People doing, goodness knows how many years, people doing, lifetimes 21, I can think of.
Yeah.
To kill you was lifetimes 22. It didn't make a damn difference, So you have to walk very carefully. You don't, I dig people out early in your career because you think that's what you should be doing, but eventually you think this is hard work, and I'm getting threatened. It's not worth it.
No, indeed. I mean, how did that make you feel?
I think it's a phase that you go through. You go through these cycles as a new officer. How are you going to? Nobody's going to get one over on me, and I'll stand up to people and all that. Yeah, that's all well and good, but you don't want to be taking. If you take one prisoner on, sometimes you're taking a dozen on as well. You take all the friends on as well. So in dispersal jails, you certainly you've got to be careful. Basically, people probably dispute that, but that's what worked for me. You had to be careful what you were doing.
That's how I found.
And the letter of the law wasn't always a good one.
And that's how I found from an inmate's point of view as well. As in, like you say, when you're fighting, you're not always fighting just one person. You could be fighting two or three of them, just because you're fighting their friend and they want to join in. There's never really a fair fight.
I upset one person, and he didn't want to get involved himself, so he gives somebody half an ounce to throw a pot of shit over my head. Job done.
Yeah.
There's always wing joys that'll do that for a stick thin Rizzler, a cigarette. They don't need to. They don't care. They don't care that they're down the seg unit for 3 months. It doesn't faze people, does it?
Exactly. No.
Absolutely.
One of the things I always sort of mention with Time and other documentaries like that is they had this, like the figure of like the wing daddy, the old guy who kind of trying to lean on both the staff and the inmates. And what was your experience of kind of people running the wing? I mean, I disagree that it's never normally someone like that. It's never normally like a 40-year-old sort of sat there. It's more sort of little gangs.
Yeah, like the Scottish guy in Time that was the wing hoarder upstairs, and he went to him for advice on how to deal with bullies. And I don't think that happened. No. Certainly not in a local jail, because people were in and out. They just hadn't got time to get the feet under the table that way. In dispersals, some of the top catés you would. I remember there was a food dispute one day, and they weren't going to go away. It was getting a bit hot down at the hot plate, shall we say. People were looking to fight us. The food wasn't good enough. We weren't going to replace it, and they were all stood there. It was like a Mexican standoff. And one of the catés there, that was quite, high up in the prisoner's estimation. He was on the guards party that I mentioned earlier, and he said, "Come on, guys, let's go away." And they all just went away, on his say so.
Wow.
So we laughed on the guards part the next day. We laughed about it. He says, "Yeah, look, he was stood by the bell. He was stood there ready to go." He was saying to me, we sort of had a good laugh about it. But I says, "Thanks for getting him away, mate." Not that it meant anything, but yeah, he said, "Go away," and the whole wing trooped away, and that was it.
Wow.
So it saved us. There would have been a big battle. Staff would have come from other wings. We would have contained it eventually, I suppose.
Yeah, indeed. But that's the thing with prisons. It's that kind of fine line, isn't it? Because there's always more prisoners than there are staff. But it's just everybody just kind of goes along with it. Enough people go along with the flow that it all just works. But there's always that fine line.
98% just want to do the time and be respectful to a staff. Just do as they're told, basically. As long as you're not asking them to do too many things. They just want to do the time and go home. It's only the odd few that want to, take you on. And you can take prisoners on and win at the end of the day, but it's a lot of effort. A lot of effort, to set people up, and do stuff is a lot of effort, and is it worth it? Sometimes it's just easy to swallow. Like the guy that on the conjugal visit, I'll just let it go. There was too much effort to place him on report, and it was just too much.
Yeah.
I'd stuffed up basically, and for whatever reason. And sometimes you have to admit that to yourself. You're stuffed up, and you just have to go with what's given out. I didn't get a kicking, so he could have instructed any number of prisoners to give me a kicking, and they would have done it, but he didn't. So I got away with it basically.
Fantastic.
But other staff didn't. It's just the way it was. And I think there was a lot of luck on my behalf that I never got done over. It's just the way it was,
On the whole, did you feel pretty safe in prison and sort of in your time in prison?
Yeah. I remember I'd coming from the workshops early, and I'd gone upstairs, on this locks, bolts and bars business. You did it on your own. I felt fairly safe, unless I dug somebody out, of course. And there was somebody upstairs. They were smashing the recess up. They ripped all the sinks out. They were pulling all the pipes out. And oh Christ, it was a real, ripping the bath out. I don't know what had gone wrong in his life. But I says, mate, look, I think you've done enough damage. It's time to go away. And he just went away, and that was it. He could have done me at the same time. It wouldn't have made any difference. There was nobody there to stop it. He went behind his door, and that was the end of it.
Well, like I was saying towards the beginning of this, my philosophy was that I was there because crimes I committed. It was always my fault. I was there, and maybe like with this chap, but my battle was never with the staff. I never really had a problem with the staff that wasn't my causing. Sort of where we butted heads or something. But it was I never attacked any staff because it was always counterproductive. They're the guys that are obviously keeping me here and can change the flow of what happens to me here. Maybe this guy, like you say, is smashing everything up, but his beef isn't with you. It's just with the system in general. And, smashing the recess up was his way of, his little way of winning and getting it back.
Well, there was a big riot there in '83. They were on the roof it was a flat tarmac roof. So yeah, it wasn't a tiled roof at that time. And what they did, it was a bit of a long story, but the four guys that got on the workshop roofs during exercise, they were smashing the roof and getting inside and do. And for whatever reason, the next day we let people have exercise, and it took off from there. The cell doors at that time, I don't know if you can remember what the cell doors were like at Exeter, but the ones that Albany had, they were hinged like a normal door is hinged, with 3 hinges. And they're not now. They have a big bar through them. So what they did, they put a paperback book in the behind in the gap where when the doors open, the gap where the hinges. Slam the door, and it just pulls all the screws out. The sheer weight of a steel door, and it ripped the door off. So they got this door, and they rammed it through the side of the building. There was like a lattice windows there up on the 3s, and they smashed their way through it, 10 of them whacking this door through it. And so they could get access to the roof through this smashed in window section. But the curious thing is that they all come out onto the landings, and the staff are there. You'd be locking these guys up for years. You knew who it was, even with a mask on the head made out of you just knew who it was. And they said, "Look, guys, get off the landings. Our argument isn't with you." And the staff just left the landings and went downstairs, and they just smashed the place to pieces, of course.
Wow.
The staff took control again because Parkhurst was next door, and they brought the staff across from there with the sticks and shields and that, and gained control. They shipped the whole jail out. The jail was nearly shut down for a year.
Wow.
There was that much damage done. They had to replace all the doors, of course. These doors that couldn't be taken off the hinges, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we had, just trying to think back, we had those at, I think they had them at Exeter when I was first there, possibly. I don't know if they've changed them. The big old heavy sort of doors with the
like the ones at Scrubs. I did a bit of time at Scrubs, and they were sort of them, 3-inch thick oak doors that had been on there since the 1850s, probably.
Yeah,
I can't remember whether they were hinged or not. I guess they had hinges on of some sort.
So because it wasn't until later you had the other ones with the gap down the side, because you could pass things through the gap on the side, and then the older doors you had to pass them through the things on the top.
Yeah, it was like a big. They went through on a big bar so there's no hinge. It was a bar that went from top to bottom. So there's no way they could. They opened both ways, as you know. We could. People were barricaded in. We could take screws out here and there. I never actually did it myself. Take screws out and push the door inwards, or open it outwards. No, open it outwards. So the barricade was not effective, of course, because the door would just open out. There's also holes in the door as well, where we could get hose in as well. If the place was on fire, you could just jam this hose into the
under the letterbox,
under the observation slot or whatever it was, and put the fire out that way.
You never really see many. You don't see too many fires at prisons, do you? You think there'd be more, but they're only just like cell fires rather than. They do well at kind of isolating them off. You don't really get many fires that go. Prisons that go up in flames.
No,
like whole prisons.
Yeah, well, I think the Strange was pretty well like that. But the Albany, the fires were always in the cells or in the TV room.
Yeah.
I don't know why they would set fire to all, because they had them plastic chairs in there that would burn ferociously, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah. So.
Well, no, I was just going to say thank you very much for obviously being so candid with me. We've covered a lot of topics, and it's it's been very interesting. Obviously, just going through your experiences. I just want to thank you very much for agreeing to speak to me.
Yeah. Look, anytime, William. There's lots of stuff. I told you the story about when the guy took my taxi and nearly got out of Brixton jail.
Yes. Let's just go through that one again, because in case because the reason I'm speaking to you obviously is because you popped up in the comments so often. I just thought I'd give you a.
Well, it was an attempted escape, because we were another officer and myself were taking somebody out on a hospital appointment. I think being a medic, that's what we did all the time. We were out the jail then every day. And I get the prisoner out of we have to go through reception, changing of the clothes and make sure it's the right one, so on and so forth. So you go through the reception routine. And I'd got a call on the radio saying that the taxi was there. We just used ordinary taxis. It wasn't prison transport. So I go to the gate and wave this guy through, this driver in his cab. And there was, like I said, there was, the movement in and out of the jail every day was, enormous. There was cabs there all the time, people going to court, and, the court transport, those sweat boxes were all lined up there as well. And I don't think an outside agency had taken over at that time, as they have now, of course. I think we were still doing it. There's probably 700 officers there at the jail.
Yeah.
They did 6 months inside, 6 months outside on court duties, Snaresbrook and Southwark and Bailey and all that business.
Wow.
Anyway, we get the cab in, or I get the cab in, tell them to park up, and it's only between the gate and reception, it's 10 metres, and there's no parking space. You just jam it in where you can. So I go back in. But unbeknown to me, then a sweatbox has come in and it's offloading its prisoners there, and they're not being supervised properly, which I wasn't doing either. And one of them sees a taxi there and just jumps in and says to the driver, Brixton Station or wherever it was, please. And of course, the driver thought nothing of it. That's what people did. They jumped in his cab and said destination, and he drove up to the gate. He'd get my little dog in the background. the gate opens up. They get into the carriageway. It's not manned by prison officers as such, but the OSGs.
Yeah.
The officer support grades are down there. And he goes down there to speak to him and says, what's happening here? Like, yeah, he said, I'm just one of the contractors out of A-Wing, just going to pick some more stuff up or whatever he said, along the line. He said he was a contractor. So the guy goes back upstairs and there's a discussion in the gate. And all this is going on while I'm still in reception with my prisoner. We aren't just ready yet. And eventually the gate SO came down and, he tumbled it and this isn't what it's supposed to be, and got the drive to reverse back in. So he nearly got away with it. But yeah, it was just the look of it, absolute look of it. He wasn't supervised. There's a cab, jumped in it, and he nearly got away with it. I don't know what would have happened to me. I don't remember that we had to supervise vehicles at that point. There were so many going in and out, there's so many staff about. The policy was that you would stick with it after that, of course. Because he nearly got away. I don't know, he was probably only a small-time crook doing a couple of years. But yeah, it was
just right place, right time.
Absolutely, it's just one of them things. You think back, he nearly got out, and it was nearly my fault. But I doubt with anything. They didn't. The discipline system wasn't that harsh towards us. You'd have been told off and that would have been the end of it. I was investigated several times on several things that prisoners had alleged I'd done to them, and that they never went anywhere because it wasn't geared to go anywhere.
No. We could do a whole episode on sort of, just those sort of things. But like I say, my angle is not to criticize too much with the prison service. But yeah, I did find myself plenty of times that you put in complaints, applications, sort of things, and they just come back so wishy-washy, or just brush it under the carpet, and nothing would ever really happen, or you wouldn't even really expect anything to happen as well.
It was geared in our favour, on nickings, down in the SEG, whatever I said to the governor, he accepted.
Yeah.
On several occasions, it was not quite as it was, but that's how it was. They accepted what you said, and that was it. And I doubt that's the case these days.
I mean, it's not changed too much. I mean, it's still rigged against the inmates. I mean, because again, who's going to complain? Who's going to really stand up for the inmates? We're there for punishment and rehabilitation. No one's really fighting our corner.
Yeah, but towards the end of my service, I wouldn't have done anything that was, you try to get on with people at the end of the day. You see it from a different angle. The old officer angle. Live and let live. I want to nick people unnecessarily.
Sure.
In fact, in Brixton, I was probably down the SEG probably twice. That's all. I can't remember. It wasn't a regular because you just didn't. You just let things slide. Of course, if there was abuse, well, so what? So what? Getting a guy, another 5 days down the SEG and a fine. So it didn't interest me anymore. It was more trouble than it was worth.
Indeed. So, well, as like I said, thank you very much for being so candid and sharing with me. This has been massively interesting, and I'm sure anyone listening would agree. So yeah, I think we'll end this here. And like I say, I'd like to thank you very much for your time and your being open with me.
Yeah, look, anytime, William.
Wow. So once again, I just want to thank the officer for coming and agreeing to talk to me. Very candid, very honest, and very knowledgeable in obviously the prisons and how things work and run. So we're still looking at other interviews to do. I've got another couple in mind that I've got to get under my belt quite quickly, and then we'll do more. All right. So thank you very much for listening. Cheers.